So why is this idea of the relative cell reference so important? Well, let's take a look at an example using this idea. And before we even do that, let's go up to the top left corner, just to the left of column A and above row 1 in either one of these boxes here, or triangles here. Let's left click and we'll highlight every single cell in the worksheet using that option. Now we could do Command A or Control A to do the exact same thing, but I just want to show you different features within Excel. So all I did was click right here, and then I'm going to move my mouse into the shaded region. That's the gray region here, and I can do that anywhere inside. And I'm going to right click and choose delete. Okay, so this will clear out the entire spreadsheet, and I'm going to click back on cell A1. Let's do a little bit more advanced demo here. And in cell A1, let's write the word quantity. We're going to pretend like we're starting a new, let's call it a t-shirt shop. And let's put in cell B1, price, and in cell C1, revenue. Okay, and let's go down to cell A2 and type in, how about we say 20, and the price is $10.99. And we know that if we sold 20 items of something that was priced at $10.99 for each item, that the total revenue would be the quantity times the price. And so here we're going to write our first, or maybe second now, formula. And we now know that any kind of formula that we want to write in Excel, we shouldn't be typing in the number by itself, like 200. We should be writing or starting the cell entry with equals. Okay, so there's no reason to use a calculator here to take 20 times $10.99. Excel is the world's most powerful calculator, and we're going to tell it to calculate by first hitting equals. And so we now need to tell it what to do. What's the operation? And so what's the formula? It's A2. So we're taking 20, or A2, this is the variable being declared, times, and we notify that by an asterisk, and B2. So just like we did before in the previous videos, we took A plus B. Here we're doing A times B, and the cells that we're referencing are the blue one shaded here, A2, that's 20, so that will be replaced right here, and B2, that's $10.99, that will be replaced right here, and this little symbol right here signifies that we're going to multiply the two numbers. And when we hit enter, we're going to see the result of 219.8. Now remember, the value here is held inside the cell, and what shows might be very different from what the value it's actually holding. So this could be 219.82 or 219.83. We don't know. And so sometimes that gives people a pause for concern, like, well, should we be doing any kind of calculation where we don't know where the number ends? And that all depends on the type of spreadsheet you're using and the analysis you're trying to make. For the purposes of a financial one and a financial spreadsheet like this one, let's right click on this cell right here and go down to Format Cells. And we'll choose the option for currency so that we can get in the second decimal place. That's the third option down under the number tab. And it'll give us a nice dollar sign too. So we have two decimal places for this currency. We're going to hit OK, and it's 219.80. So in this case, it would have been okay if we hadn't seen the zero, but we didn't know that until we reformatted. So something to be aware of. Always note that Excel is always going to hold the value that is closest to being true. So what I mean by that is it's not going to round by default. It's not going to round unless you tell it to. So we can do that in a future example, but for now, let's just take a look at this here where we have A2 times B2, and we're using relative cell references. Okay, we're using relative cell references. A2 and B2 are referring to these cells right here to get our calculation of 219.80. What makes this extremely powerful, what Excel is all about, is what happens when this list starts to grow. So let's do it manually here to just get our practice with it and type in the quantity of 14 at a price of $29.99. And you now can practice this step by yourself. You may even want to pause the video and try and calculate the revenue for what would be the revenue if we sold 14 items at $29.99. Go ahead and practice this. Okay, so I hope you did that just fine, but let me show you the result here. Let's hit equals, and remember we could hit the left arrow over to A3, and we could do times or shift 8, and then hit the left arrow again to get B3. Or we could type it in, A3 times B3. It's color-coded to help you out, and let's hit enter. And we get 419.86, and notice how it's not formatted like the cell above. There are ways to quickly change the formatting, but let's just leave it like that for now. The formatting is not that important. Okay, now let's really speed it up. Let's put in a few different quantities here in A4 going down. So how about 15, 12, 10, 8, and 25. And let's go up to the price and cell B4. And how about we do 80, 70, 60, 50, 40. So in each one of these, let's just walk through the logic. We sold 15 items at $80 and we want to know the revenue. We could type in the formula each time for equals, but let's do something different here. Let's hit backspace and tab to get out of that edit window. And let's go up to cell C3, and we're going to take the bottom right corner of this cell. You'll see the cursor change right now. It's two white lines intersecting, and the bottom right hand corner of this cell, when it's highlighted, we're going to go down here and it's going to switch to two black lines intersecting. And we're going to click and drag this down to the last row. And I'll talk about what's happening here in a second, but let's take a look at the result in cell C4. So when we click on C4, it says 1200. You should be looking at the formula bar to see what's happening to get 1200. If you want to see it visually, go up here and click on the formula bar, and it will show you what cells are being impacted. So A4 is being impacted, B4 is in the equation, and it's taking A4 times B4. Now, how in the world did Excel know how to take A4 times B4? This is the magic of Excel. And if you understand this, you'll begin to unlock the power of Microsoft Excel. So what happened was, when we carried down the formula before, we dragged this down, Excel recognized that we were going to be moving our equation down one row. And so it went from A3 and B3. We drug this down, and it switched the 3s to 4s. I'll show that one more time. So where the formula said 3 and 3, it knew that you were going down one to do a new formula. When you brought this cell down, it said, okay, you're going down a row. And since you're going down a row, we need to change the 3 up here to a 4, A4 and B4. Now this is a very difficult concept to grasp. It takes about 100 times of doing this before you really feel comfortable with what's happening. But hopefully you're starting to see why this is so powerful. Because if we click the next one down, C5, we went down another row. It's now taking A5 times B5. That's this. I'll click on the formula bar. That's this blue cell times this red cell. And that's exactly what we want. So I'll hit enter again to get out of edit mode. And you can see that this formula carried all the way down to the very end. A8 times B8. This is the magic of Excel. We'll pause here, and in the next video, I'll break down exactly what's happening. Sometimes it pays to learn how Excel works by making a mistake on purpose. And so that's what I'd like to do here and go to cell C2 to try and make this mistake. We have an absolute cell reference here because we have $signs in the formula bar, and we want to make it a little bit more restrictive. We're going to put a $sign in front of the 2 and a $sign in front of the 2 here and hit enter. And we're going to copy and paste this formula going down. And I hope you are already kind of thinking that this is probably going to lead to a mistake, but let's go ahead and do that anyways and drag it down in the bottom right hand corner. And what we're doing there is performing a copy and paste. we're bringing down the cell formula here down to the next cell going down. And you notice that all the values are the same. Okay, so everything is 219.80. Well, it's doing exactly what we told it to do. Let's go down to cell C8, click on the formula bar, and see that it's taking A2 times B2. So I want you to stop, reflect, and think about that. We put dollar signs in the place where we want something to stay the same. So we wanted the A to stay the same when we brought the formula down, where we copied it and pasted it down. And we wanted the 2 to stay the same when we copy and pasted it down. And so it did exactly that. It kept A2 and it kept B2. And so we went to drag the formula down, and that's exactly what happened. So I hope that that is becoming more clear to you, what's happening there with the absolute references and putting dollar signs in both positions. Let's take a second to recap the differences between the relative cell reference and the absolute cell references. Okay. The relative cell references have no dollar signs in them. So in our example, we had A2 times B2 with no dollar signs. Everything is subject to change. It may not change based on how we drag the formula down or bring it over to the right, but it is subject to change based on how you make the copy and paste movement. Meanwhile, the absolute cell references can be written like this. $A2. It could be $2 or $2. This is the most restrictive type. And that's exactly what we did before with the dollar signs in both positions. So when we copied and pasted the formula going down, it was the most restrictive in that it didn't let the A change and it didn't let the 2 change. So we do want, in this particular case, the 2 to change to a 3, the 3 change to a 4, and so on. So let's take this back here and let's remove the dollar sign in front of the 2 and remove the dollar sign in front of the 2. And this time, instead of dragging the bottom right-hand corner of the box, let's use Command C or Control C for Windows, or if you went up here to edit and hit copy, that would be fine as well. And then let's hover our mouse over cell C3, somewhere in the middle of C3. So not over the edge, but somewhere in the middle of cell C3, like right here. Click and drag down to cell C8 with a left click, and then hit Command V for paste, or go up here and hit edit, paste. Just to let you know, that is the same exact operation. If we were to click and drag down, we're performing a copy and paste. This is a very difficult concept, again, to learn in Excel, and it takes a few times doing this to really feel comfortable. But let's look at the results here. Maybe it'll start to sink in. So we have now, let's go to cell C3. You see that the 2 changes to a 3. The A and B stayed the same. And there you have it. We have the right numbers being multiplied. If you hit enter and then go down arrow all the way to the end, you see we have A8 times B8. That's exactly what we expected. So here we're using an absolute cell reference where we locked the column. Again, I'll say we locked the column. When you see a dollar sign, you should think lock in position. So we've locked the columns, but not the rows. And that works for us in this situation. So long as we're copying and pasting down, this works for us. The A and B weren't going to change anyways, but we went ahead and locked it just for an extra layer of security, if you want to think of it that way. Just to kind of push this point in a little bit further, let's go back up to cell C2 and let's click and drag the bottom right-hand corner over to the right. So this is going to be a copy and paste over to the right. And you'll notice now why it's so important to have the dollar sign, because as we copied and pasted it over to the right, we see that the dollar sign kept the A and the B, and let's click on the formula bar. You see that it's still multiplying quantity times the price. In some situations you might want that, in some situations you don't. You'll notice that cell references always depend on the situation. So rest assured, throughout this course, I'll show you different situations where we do and don't want these dollar signs. But for now, we're just getting our practice in as to why these dollar signs are used and why they're so important for Microsoft Excel. I promise you we'll use them over and over again the rest of the course. So let's see what happens when we click and drag this bottom right hand corner down. Look at cell D8. We get A8 times B8. It's exactly the same formula that it was in cell C8. Okay, let's compare that to the situation had we, I'll just clear these cells out by highlighting them all. Just to give you the idea there of what I did, I went up to cell D2 and held down the shift key and hit the down arrow. That highlights multiple items. And I right click and choose clear contents. Let's go back to cell D2, I'm sorry, C2, and let's take out the dollar signs. Okay, so we'll take those out. No surprise that nothing changed. It's still taking A2 times B2. That's what we wanted. And let me hit the tab key to get out of the edit mode. And this time I'm going to click and drag or copy and paste this over to the right. But remember, I've removed the absolute cell reference. So what's going to happen here? Hopefully you're already thinking about what might take place. Let's click on D2 and notice that the formula has shifted from A times B to B times C. So it's moved these over one cell over to the right. So now we're taking B2 times C2. And in our case, we certainly don't want that. It doesn't give us anything that we're looking for. We don't want to take price times revenue. And so this would be an example of where we wanted to have locked the A and the B in place to prevent something like this from happening, where we were to copy and paste the cell over. We'd still want to take this times this. To recap again, relative cell reference has no dollar signs. Whenever you see a dollar sign, think lock in position. Always ask yourself, what is not going to change when I copy and paste these cells? Is it the column represented by a letter, or is it the row represented by a number? Or is it both, the column and the row? And so I need dollar signs in both positions. You can have a mixture of absolute cell references. The most restrictive is this type with $2 signs. And again, relative has no dollar signs.